Hello everyone, I am Mr. Night Truth. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and let's go down into the story.
Story number. You ever hear about the place where an entire village just vanished? I went there. I saw it with my own eyes. And I swear to you, though I probably shouldn't, that not everyone was gone. Some of them were still there, waiting. And if I tell you the truth about what I saw, then maybe you won't believe I ever came back at all. You know what still keeps me up at night? It isn't the stories I read online, or the grainy black and white photos of Inuit hunters standing in the snow. It's the fact that I was there, me, alone, in the middle of nowhere, and I swear to you, I heard voices in a place where no living soul was supposed to exist. That's the part that doesn't add up. That's the part nobody believes when I tell it. Maybe you won't either. I didn't go north looking for trouble. Not at first. At least, that's what I tell people. The truth is messier, and I don't think I've ever told it straight. I used to run a small YouTube channel. Travel vlogs, forgotten places, weird folklore. I told myself that this was just another episode. Content. But I can't pretend that anymore. I wasn't chasing views. I was chasing something else. Something I lost, or maybe something that lost me. The road north is not really a road at all, not in the way you'd picture. Past the last gas station, past the last town that barely deserved the name, the pavement broke apart and surrendered to frozen gravel. Then the gravel gave way to ice-packed soil, and then just white, endless white. I kept driving until even the trees gave up. Hours passed in silence, except for the groan of the truck's engine and the crunch of tires. I kept telling myself I was documenting this, that I'd set up the tripod when I arrived, film the whole thing. That was the lie I wrapped myself in. Deep down, I knew no one would ever see the footage. The story of Angie Cooney had always been strange. Back in 1930, an entire Inuit village was reported missing. Families, dogs, tools, gone. No bodies, no blood, no footprints, just absence. Some said it was starvation. Others whispered about abductions, curses, even aliens. I told myself I was going there to prove something. But every time I looked in the mirror before the trip, I couldn't shake the thought, prove it to who? The heater rattled and coughed, fighting against the cold. Breath fogged the windshield from the inside. Beyond the glass, the world looked like a painting someone had half erased. Grey sky, pale snow, black scars of frozen lakes, no signs of life. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't driving alone. At one point, I pulled over, killed the engine, and stepped outside. The silence pressed down on me like a weight. It wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of quiet where even your heartbeat feels intrusive. I don't know why I did it, but I called out. Just a stupid little hello, the way you might in an empty house, half hoping no one answers. Something did. Not a voice, exactly. More like the echo of a voice, stretched thin by the wind. I spun around, heart jackhammering, but there was nothing. Just my own boot prints leading back to the truck. That should have been the moment I turned around. But obsession has a way of blinding you. Or maybe I wasn't blind at all. Maybe I was following something I already knew was out there. Hours blurred into night. The further north I went, the more the GPS stuttered, then froze, then disappeared altogether. The compass needle spun like it had lost its mind. The truck headlights carved tunnels through the snow, and every time they caught on a shape, a ridge, a shadow, a crooked tree, I swore it was a figure watching me. I kept thinking of the photos I'd studied before leaving, the ones that showed huts, sleds, campfires still burning even though no one was around to tend them. I wondered what it would feel like to stand in those same places, to look into those same homes, I told myself I was documenting history, but if you'd asked me then, if you'd really pressed me, I might have admitted something else. I wasn't driving toward the village. I was driving towards someone. The first real sign I was close came just before midnight. The truck's headlights hit a wooden marker half buried in snow, rough, weathered, painted with patterns I didn't recognize. I got out and brushed it off, fingers numb, and felt the grooves of symbols cut into the wood. Hunting signs? Warnings? I couldn't tell. That's when I heard it again. A voice. This time it was clearer, closer. Words I didn't understand, but they weren't just the wind. They carried intent, rhythm, almost like a lullaby. I stood frozen, snowflakes clinging to my eyelashes, trying to pinpoint the source. But the sound slipped away the moment I acknowledged it, as though it had been waiting for me to listen. I climbed back into the truck, shaking. My hands smelled like the wood of that marker, old and bitter. The village didn't appear all at once. It revealed itself in fragments teased out of the night. First, a line of fence posts, then the outline of roofs, sagging under snow. Finally, the shapes of cabins, dozens of them, silent and still. I stopped the truck at the edge and turned off the engine. For a moment, everything went black, swallowed by the Arctic night. Then my eyes adjusted, and the village materialized, ghostly under the dim glow of the moon. That's when it hit me. This place wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Not like this. The record said the cabins were gone, destroyed by time. But here they were, standing stubbornly against the cold, as though no one had left at all. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, too afraid to move, too afraid not to. My camera lay on the passenger seat. I should have picked it up, should have documented it, but I didn't. I couldn't. Because if I recorded it, I'd have proof. And if I had proof, then I couldn't keep pretending I imagined it. I don't remember turning off the headlights, but suddenly I was sitting in darkness. The village stretched ahead of me, a patchwork of shadows and pale light. My chest tightened, lungs straining against air that felt colder than it should have been. Something flickered at the edge of my vision. Movement between two cabins. A person, tall, draped in furs, walking calmly through the snow. My body reacted before my mind did. I opened the door, stumbled out and whispered, "Hello." The figure didn't stop, didn't turn, just disappeared around the corner of a shack. I followed. Of course I did. And here's the part where I always lose people. The part no one ever believes. Because when I rounded the corner, the space was empty. Untouched snow. No footprints, no figure, nothing. But I swear, I wasn't alone. The village was waiting, watching, and that was only the beginning. That night, I stepped into the first cabin, and what I found inside made me question whether the village had ever truly been abandoned, or if I had just been invited in. You know that feeling when you cross a threshold you know you can't uncross? That's what it was like when I pushed open the door to the first cabin. My hand was shaking, but not from the cold. It was more like hesitation, maybe guilt. Like I already knew I wasn't supposed to be there. The hinges groaned, a sound that felt too loud for a place so silent. I stepped inside, and right away I noticed something that didn't make sense. The air was warmer, not by much, but enough that my breath didn't cloud as heavily. I told myself it was the insulation, or maybe my nerves playing tricks, but deep down I knew. I knew something had been here, maybe was still here. The cabin looked lived in. That's the only way I can say it. A pot sat on the stove, blackened with soot. A pair of snow boots leaned against the wall. A blanket was draped over a chair, one corner folded, like someone had just stood up. I froze. All the reports I'd read described the place as abandoned, untouched since 1930. But this looked recent. Wrong. I reached for my camera again, then stopped. My hand hovered, trembling, before I shoved it back into my pocket. And here's the part where I need to be honest. Or as honest as I can be. This wasn't the first time I'd hesitated to record something. Back in school when... No, forget that. That doesn't matter. What matters is that I chose not to record. Maybe because I didn't want proof. Or maybe because proof wasn't meant for anyone else. I walked through the room slowly, each step crunching against the frozen dirt floor. My flashlight beam trembled over the walls. There were carvings, lines, spirals, shapes that almost looked like animals but distorted, stretched. I leaned closer. At first, I thought they were ancient, but then I noticed the wood was freshly cut, the grooves sharp and clean. Someone had carved these recently. That's when I heard it, a whisper. Right behind me, I spun so fast I nearly dropped the flashlight. The beam cut across the room, shaking, catching only dust. Nothing there, no one, but the whisper had been real. It had pressed against my ear, close enough that I swear I felt the warmth of breath. I stumbled back outside, heart pounding, and looked at the other cabins. Dozens of them, silent, watching. Something in me said, don't go further. But obsession is a poison. It convinces you that the only cure is more of it. So I went. The second cabin was worse, much worse. Inside the table was set. 3 wooden bowls, a knife, a ladle. Food still inside, frozen solid, but recognizable. Meat stew or something like it, I gagged. Not from the smell, it was too cold for rot, but from the thought. How long had this been here? A day? A week? 90 years? And then there was the cradle. Small, wooden, rocking gently, as though touched by a hand I couldn't see. I don't know how long I stood there, listening to that faint creak, back and forth, back and forth. I should have left, but instead I whispered, "Hello." The cradle stopped. I backed out, nearly tripping over the threshold, and slammed the door. My breath came fast, ragged. The snow under my boots squealed like it was protesting. That's when I saw it. Movement again. A figure at the far end of the street between 2 cabins. This time I didn't call out. I just watched. It was tall, wrapped in fur, head tilted like it was studying me. And then, slowly, it raised one hand and beckoned. I blinked, and it was gone. The next few minutes, or maybe hours, they're a blur. I went from cabin to cabin, pulled by something I can't explain. Every home told the same story. Someone had just been there, just left. In one, a lamp still burned faintly. In another, a journal lay open, ink frozen mid-sentence. In another, dog sled harnesses dangled neatly from hooks, as though waiting for morning. But the worst was the photographs. Tacked to a wall in one of the homes were pictures, old, curling at the edges, but clear enough. Families, children, hunters, all Inuit, smiling faintly, captured in moments of daily life, except in the corner of one photo, just barely visible, was a figure in modern clothes, a coat like mine, a hood like mine. I staggered back, shaking, dropped the photo, swore, because I knew that couldn't be right. Unless I'd been there before, but no, that was impossible, wasn't it? At some point I started talking out loud. To the houses, to the shadows, maybe to myself. I don't know. I just want to understand, I muttered. That's all. I'm not here to hurt anyone. The wind howled in reply. But under it, I swear I heard a child laugh. I whipped around, flashlight jerking. The beam caught on the edge of a cabin door, cracked open just an inch. Inside, the darkness shifted, moved. I should have run. But instead, I pushed it open. The room was empty, at least at first glance. Just another cabin. But on the wall, scratched deep into the wood, were words. Not Inuit. English. You shouldn't have come back. I froze. My mouth went dry. I ran my fingertips over the grooves. They were rough, splintered, fresh. And the word that hit me hardest wasn't shouldn't. It wasn't back. It was you. Because whoever carved it hadn't been talking about some stranger. They'd been talking about me. I stumbled outside again, vision blurring. The village spun around me, cabins looming, leaning closer, crowding me. I couldn't tell if it was the snow stinging my eyes or tears, but I felt swallowed, devoured. That's when the voice came again. Not a whisper this time. A full, clear voice, echoing down the street. "Why did you leave us?" I froze. My skin crawled. My throat tightened. Because here's the thing. I don't remember leaving anyone. I don't remember being part of this place. And yet, when that voice asked the question, a memory flickered in my mind. A fire, a circle of faces, a child's hand gripping mine. I shook it away. No, that wasn't me. That wasn't my life. But what if it was? I don't know how long I stood there, caught between running and collapsing. My legs moved on their own, dragging me toward the largest cabin at the end of the village. The door stood wide open, snow drifting in. Inside, I could see the outline of furniture, and something else, something moving. I raised the flashlight, heart clawing at my ribs, and whispered, "Who's there?" Silence, and then a reply, low, certain, almost human. "You are." You know how sometimes you walk into a room and you feel, instantly, that you've made a mistake, like the walls themselves are holding their breath, waiting for you to do the wrong thing. That's what it felt like when I stepped inside the first cabin. I keep telling myself it was just the cold, the isolation. My nerves stretched thin, but that doesn't explain why the air inside was warmer, or why it smelled faintly of smoke, as if someone had just stoked a fire. The cabin should have been abandoned for 90 years. But it wasn't empty, not really. There was a pot on the stove, its rim black with soot, a wooden spoon resting against it, a pair of boots by the door, things left like their owner had only stepped out for a minute. I froze, staring. My brain tried to reason it away. Maybe explorers, hunters, squatters. But then why did the boots look so familiar, like I'd seen them before? I reached for my camera, then stopped. My hand hovered over the strap before I shoved it away. Because here's the truth. I didn't want evidence. Not yet. Proof would mean admitting what I already knew. That this place wasn't as dead as everyone claimed. The silence pressed harder the longer I stood there. It wasn't empty silence. It was watching silence. I could feel it crawling across my skin. That's when I heard it. A whisper. It came from just over my shoulder, so close I felt a flutter of air against my ear. I spun, flashlight jerking, heart racing. Nothing. But I know what I heard. Someone said my name. I didn't tell you my name, did I? Right. I must have slipped earlier. Doesn't matter. Forget it. I stumbled back into the night, snow crunching under my boots. The village stretched before me like a stage waiting for its actors to return. Cabins hunched under heavy roofs, windows dark, doors crooked. Something moved. At the far end, between two huts, a figure, tall, wrapped in fur, standing still, watching me. I wanted to call out, but my throat closed. My lips only formed the word, "Please." And then the figure lifted its hand, slow and deliberate, as though beckoning me closer. I blinked, and it was gone. The second cabin was worse. The moment I stepped in, I knew. This wasn't abandoned. A table was set with 3 bowls, the contents frozen mid-meal. A knife rested beside them, blade rusted at the tip but sharp along the edge, and in the corner, a cradle. Wooden, small, rocking gently, though there was no wind inside. I don't know how long I stared. Seconds, minutes. The sound of it creaking back and forth drilled into my skull until I couldn't take it. "Hello?" I whispered. The cradle stopped. I ran out, nearly tripping on the threshold. The snow burned my lungs with every breath. The village looked different now, closer. The cabins seemed to lean in toward me, crowding together. My eyes darted from door to door, certain one would fly open. I kept telling myself I'd imagined it. The cradle, the whisper, the figure. But if it was all in my head, then why did I see tracks in the snow? Not mine, not animal, too wide, too deliberate, footsteps leading from one house to the next. The third cabin had pictures, old photographs pinned to the wall, curling at the edges. Families, hunters, children wrapped in furs. But one picture, God, I can't get it out of my head. One picture showed a group standing outside the very cabin I was in, and in the corner, half hidden, was a man in a modern jacket. My kind of jacket. I staggered back, heart hammering because it looked like me. I told myself it wasn't, couldn't be, maybe a trick of light, damage to the photo. But when I lifted it closer, the resemblance was undeniable. The photo slipped from my fingers and fluttered to the floor. By then, I was talking out loud, muttering to myself, to the walls, to whoever or whatever might be listening. I just want to know the truth, that's all. I won't hurt you, I just want to understand. And then, faint under the wind, came laughter, high-pitched, childlike. I spun, flashlight beams slicing across the snow. It landed on a cabin door cracked open. Inside something shifted. My stomach dropped. My legs carried me forward, though every instinct screamed not to. The cabin was dark, but the walls glistened where my light hit them. Carvings, not patterns this time, but words, not Inuit. English. You shouldn't have come back. My breath caught. I traced the grooves with numb fingers. Splinters bit into my skin. The cuts were fresh, the wood raw. The word that hit hardest was you. Who carved this? And why were they so certain it was meant for me? I stumbled outside, vision swimming. The night pressed closer. Cabins loomed taller. The entire village seemed alive, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to move. Then a voice cut through the silence. Not a whisper this time. Clear. Low. Why did you leave us? I froze. My skin prickled. My lips parted, but no sound came out. Because I didn't leave anyone. Not here. Not ever. At least that's what I tell myself. But when that voice asked the question, something cracked inside me. A memory, blurry, sharp, impossible, flashed behind my eyes. A fire, a ring of faces, a child gripping my hand. No, that wasn't me. That couldn't be me, and yet the voice came again, closer. Why did you leave us? I stumbled backward, feet dragging trenches in the snow. Shadows shifted. Shapes moved between the cabins. Watching, waiting. I turned, and at the far end of the village stood the largest cabin, door wide open. Moonlight spilled across the threshold, faintly illuminating what was inside. Furniture, carvings, and something else. Something that shifted when I looked at it. I raised my flashlight with a trembling hand. Who's there? For a heartbeat. Nothing. Then a reply, low and certain, echoing through the cold. You are. That was the moment I realized the truth wasn't in the homes, wasn't in the village at all. It was in me, and whatever had happened here 90 years ago wasn't finished. I wish I could tell you that I left the village that night, that I turned and ran, that I made it back to my truck, that the headlights cut through the snow and carried me away. That would make sense, wouldn't it? But sense doesn't live here. And the truth, if that's even what this is that I don't remember leaving. I only remember standing in the doorway of that largest cabin, hearing those words echo through the dark. You are. Inside, the air was warmer, thick, heavy. My flashlight beam trembled as it swept across the room. The walls were covered in carvings, spirals, animals, faces, but the faces had been gouged out, eyes hollow, mouths torn away. Furniture lay scattered, broken. A long table sagged under the weight of dust and frost. And at the far end, something moved. Not fast, just a shift. A shadow detaching from the wall. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice cracked. The figure didn't answer. It only turned slightly, enough for the light to catch on its furs, its hood, the outline of shoulders. And then I realized something that made my stomach lurch. The figure was my height, my build, my stance. Like I was staring at myself. I stumbled back, but the door behind me slammed shut, sealing the cabin in suffocating dark. My flashlight flickered. "Why did you leave us?" The voice came again, everywhere at once, layered, too many mouths speaking in unison. "I didn't," I shouted. "I don't even belong here." But even as I said it, another memory clawed its way up from the depths. A memory of standing in this very cabin years ago, or maybe decades, my hands wrapped around another's shoulders, promising I'd return. I pressed my palms to my skull. No, that wasn't me. That wasn't me. The figure tilted its head. A low chuckle rippled through the air. "You never left. The next part, it doesn't feel like it happened. More like a dream I can't wake from. But if I don't tell you, then you'll never understand what they took with them." The walls began to shake, dust raining down, carvings bleeding fresh into the wood, as though etched by invisible hands. The floor groaned, the table split, and the air, God, the air, filled with voices, men, women, children, whispering, crying, laughing, all overlapping, all too close. I dropped the flashlight. Its beam rolled across the floor, catching glimpses of movement, fingers curling out of the dirt, eyes glinting in the walls, mouths opening where no mouth should be. I screamed. I admit it. I screamed until my throat tore raw. And in the middle of it all, the figure stepped forward, calm, steady, like it had been waiting for me to finally break. I backed into the corner, trembling. "What do you want from me?" The figure crouched, and though I swear it never touched me, I felt a hand press against my chest. Cold, heavy. "They want what you took," the voice murmured. "They want what you left behind." My mind flashed again. Firelight, faces, the child's hand in mine. The memory I'd denied, the promise I'd broken. "No," I whispered. "I don't remember. I don't—" The figure leaned closer. I could feel its breath, though it had no face. Memory is a choice. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, I was outside again, lying in the snow. The village loomed around me, cabins silent, windows black. But something was different. The footprints were gone. The carvings, the warmth, all of it, as if the homes had finally surrendered to time, rotted back into ruins. Had I imagined it? Hallucinated the whole night? I staggered to my feet, dizzy, nauseous. My truck sat at the edge of the clearing, half buried in snow. I ran for it, fumbling with frozen fingers, wrenching the door open. Inside, my camera waited on the passenger seat, red light blinking, recording. I snatched it up and hit play. The screen lit my face, pale and cracked with fear. My own voice spilled out, shaky but clear. "They're still here. I never left. I never left them. I dropped it." The words weren't mine. I never said them. Did I? I don't remember driving south. Don't remember the hours that must have passed. I only remember the feeling that I wasn't alone in the truck, that someone, or many someones, sat in the back seat, silent, watching. Sometimes I think they never left, that when the village vanished, they didn't disappear at all. They just moved into me. And that's the truth I've been circling around. The truth I don't want to say but can't keep inside any longer. I didn't go north just to document the story. I didn't go for views. for content, for folklore. I went because I remembered, because I'd been there before, because I'd left them once, and they wouldn't let me do it again. Now every night I hear them, whispers under the floorboards, laughter in the pipes, scratches on the walls. I see their faces in mirrors, reflected over my own. I feel their weight in my chest, pressing harder with each breath. They didn't just vanish. They took something with them, and now they've taken me. If you're watching this, don't come looking for me. Don't go north. Don't chase ghosts that aren't yours to claim, because some disappearances aren't mysteries to solve. They're invitations, and once you accept, you'll never walk away. Story number 2. The first time I locked that church door, it clicked shut so tight I thought nothing could open it. But when I turned back, it was already wide open again. And here's the part you won't believe. Sometimes, when the door opens, it isn't to the church at all. I swear I locked it, but the door was breathing again, like something alive was pushing from the other side, waiting for me to let go. That's how it always begins with that church. Not the creak of the wood, not the gust of mountain wind, not even the silence that stretches too long. It's the breath. You hear it before you see the doors move, like the building itself is tired of pretending to be empty. And I know, you're probably rolling your eyes already, thinking I'm exaggerating. Maybe I am, or maybe I've been lying about it this whole time, just like I lied about everything else that happened up there. The truth is, I can't stop going back. I've tried, believe me. People tell me it's just a building, stone walls, broken pews, rotting hymnals. But they don't understand what it feels like when you stand in front of those warped wooden doors and hear them inhale. I don't think anyone's been inside that church in years. At least not anyone who made it back down the mountain in one piece. The locals avoid it. Hikers detour miles around it. The trail that leads there is almost invisible now, hidden under moss and roots, like the forest is trying to erase the path. And yet somehow, I always find it again. It started when I was a kid. You'll laugh, but my earliest memory isn't of birthdays or school. No, it's that church. I couldn't have been older than 7 the first time I stood in front of it, clutching the hand of, well, someone I shouldn't name. Not yet. You'll understand later. Back then, the doors looked taller, heavier, almost regal, though they already carried that strange habit of never staying shut. My friend and I would push them closed, listen to the echo of the latch, and then, seconds later, hear the groan as they drifted open again. We thought it was funny. We thought it was a game, but games end. I remember one afternoon in particular. The sky was thick with clouds, that strange grey before a storm, and we dared each other to step inside. I swore I heard whispering then, soft, like someone praying. My friend said it was just the wind in the rafters, but the words had shape. They curled against my ears like they'd been spoken just for me. I told them I wanted to leave. They laughed, said I was too scared, and maybe I was. But what haunts me now isn't that I was afraid. It's that they weren't. See, that's the part I never understood. The doors never stayed shut, yes, but they didn't open the same way for both of us. For me, sometimes they led to the dusty chapel, pews half rotted, stained glass shattered into jagged teeth. For my friend, I think they saw something else. Their eyes would go wide, fixed on things I couldn't see. Once, they whispered, "It's so bright in here." Bright? In that suffocating dark. I still don't know if they were teasing me or if the church chose to show us different faces, but it gnawed at me. It still does. Years passed, and people in town stopped talking about the church. They warned me not to climb the mountain alone, muttering about accidents. But no one said what kind. Everyone knew the doors. Everyone pretended they didn't. And me, I couldn't stop thinking about them. Do you know what obsession feels like? It's not passion. It's not curiosity. It's a hook in your chest that drags you back to the same place, the same thought, the same door. And every time you think you've cut yourself free, you feel it tug again. That church was my hook. Maybe it still is. Sometimes I wonder if I'm even telling this right. Memories change, stories rot, like wood left out in the rain. You convince yourself you remember exactly how it went, but details slip. Did the door breathe that day, or was that another time? Did my friend laugh, or did they hesitate? I've told this story so many ways that I can't separate the truth from the version that lets me sleep at night. But I'll tell you this much. The last time we went together, I swore I'd never return. We closed the doors, braced them with our weight, and still, they shuddered open. Not wide, just enough to let out a draft that smelled like damp earth, like something buried too long. My friend stepped forward and I grabbed their arm. I told them no. I told them it wasn't safe. They shook me off, and then I don't know how to finish that sentence. Or maybe I do, and I just don't want to. What I can say is that the church remembers us. Every time I return alone, the doors behave differently. Sometimes they creak open slowly, as if reluctant. Sometimes they slam wide as soon as I touch the latch. And once, only once, they were already open when I arrived, yawning like a mouth that had been waiting all night. I tell myself I keep going back to prove it isn't real, that it's just decay and weather, wood expanding and shrinking with the mountain air. But if that's all it is, why do I hear that whispering again when I stand too close? Why does it always sound like my name? I shouldn't even be recording this. Talking about it makes it stronger. But maybe that's the point. Maybe the church wants to be remembered. Maybe the doors breathe because they're hungry. And maybe, just maybe, I've left out the most important part. Because I'm not the only one who's gone missing up there. But that's another story. People think echoes fade. But the ones I hear inside that church don't die out. They answer back. That's the part no one believes. And honestly, I can't blame them. Even saying it now, my throat tightens. I've told myself, over and over, that it's just memory, that it's guilt bleeding into sound. But the echoes don't behave like memories. They're sharp, immediate, timed perfectly to my words, like someone is right there, just out of sight, mimicking me. The first time it happened, I was older, maybe 16. Sneaking back up to the church by myself. I told you before I swore I'd never return, and I meant it, but promises rot. By then my friend was gone. Everyone said they left town. They made it sound ordinary, like packing a bag and vanishing overnight is something kids do all the time. I nodded along, pretended to believe it, but inside I knew they'd never just left. And yet, when I pushed the church doors open, because they were never closed for long, I heard them, clear as the day they laughed in my face. "You're late," the echo said. I froze, skin buzzing. My voice cracked when I whispered back, "What?" And then, timed too perfectly to be chance, the same tone, the same rhythm. "What?" It was mocking me. It always mocked me. Now you're thinking, yeah, churches have good acoustics. Old wood, hollow spaces, sound bouncing around. Echoes are just physics, and maybe you're right. But then why did the echo change? Why did it shift into phrases I never spoke? Why did it say my name? I still hear it. Late at night, when the house settles, when the pipes hum. Sometimes it comes in fragments. Don't leave me, don't leave me. Other times it's crueler. You pushed me, you buried me, you locked the door. I never told anyone that part. If I did, what would they think? That I killed my friend. That's what the echo wants them to think. But I didn't. I swear I didn't. At least, I don't think I did. See, that's the problem with memory. It's slippery. You grab one piece and another slips free. I remember fighting with them that last day. Their voice sharp, accusing. I remember the door swinging shut, heavy, final. I remember my own hands on the wood, trying to hold it closed, telling them it was for their own good. But after that, silence, A silence so deep it swallowed my heartbeat. Did I let go? Did the church take over? Or did they step inside willingly, smiling like they'd been chosen? I can't answer. I've rewritten it in my head so many times that I don't know which version is real. What I do know is that the echo hasn't stopped since. Years later, I thought I could prove it was just me, just guilt. I brought a recorder, cheap little handheld thing. I set it on the altar, pressed the red button, and spoke out loud. "My name is," I said, and then paused. My voice cracked on my own name, so I stopped. I didn't finish. When I played the tape back, my voice came through weak and trembling. "My name is," and then right after, in a voice that wasn't mine, "What? And you left me here?" I smashed that recorder to pieces, but breaking the machine didn't break the sound. I hear it everywhere now, not just in the church. Passing cars hiss like whispers. The wind through my bedroom window groans in their cadence. Once, standing in my kitchen, I heard the faucet drip in perfect rhythm. Don't leave me. And yet, I keep going back. Because maybe, just maybe, if I listen hard enough, I'll get the full story. Maybe the church will cough up the truth. Or maybe it'll bury me next, and that's what I deserve. You want the worst part? Sometimes the echo doesn't sound angry. Sometimes it sounds happy, like it's relieved I've returned. Like it was waiting, like it never wanted me to leave in the first place. I'll give you an example. Last winter, snow thick on the ground. I trudged up there alone. I told myself it was the last time, that I'd see the church one final time, and then bury it in my memory. I remember the crunch of ice under my boots, the sting of air in my lungs. When I reached the clearing, the doors weren't shut, not even cracked. They were wide open, yawning into black. I should have turned back. Any sane person would have. But I walked in. The air was warmer than outside, stale but alive. I whispered, "I shouldn't be here." And from the rafters, from the pews, from the walls themselves, I heard, "Be here." Then softer, almost playful, "Ma, missed you." Tell me that's physics. Tell me that's my imagination. Because I stood frozen, heart hammering, every muscle screaming to run. And instead, I laughed. A nervous laugh, yes, but still a laugh. Because for a second, I felt less alone. That's what scares me the most. Not that the echo is real, but that I want it to be. That I need it. That some part of me would rather believe my friend is still inside that church, whispering to me, than accept the other possibility, that they're gone, and I'm the reason why. Sometimes in my darker nights, I wonder if the church is punishing me or protecting me. Is it keeping their memory alive as torture, or is it sparing me from silence? I don't know which answer terrifies me more, but I can't keep pretending. I can't keep telling you half-truths, leaving out pieces, because there's one thing I've never said out loud, not to anyone, not until now. That day, the last day I heard them scream. It was brief, muffled, cut off too soon. I told myself it was the storm. I told myself it was the wind through the beams. But I know a human scream when I hear it, and I know it was theirs. The echo doesn't let me forget. Every time I step inside, I hear it again, louder, closer, sharper. Sometimes, I think if I stay long enough, I'll hear the rest of it. The part I cut off, the words I never let them finish. But the church doesn't give answers. It only opens its doors, waits for me to step through, and breathes in my fear. And lately, the echo has started saying something new. Not just "don't leave me" or "you buried me." No. Now it whispers, "it's your turn." I used to think the church wanted me, but now I know it never did. The door was never for me. It was always waiting for someone else. That's the thought that keeps me awake at night. I know it doesn't make sense, but I can feel it in my bones. Every time I press my hand to that heavy wood, every time I hear it shift and sigh beneath my touch, I know I'm only borrowing a doorway that doesn't belong to me, like a trespasser in someone else's nightmare. And maybe that's why the church hates me. Do you remember how I told you the echo started saying new things? It's your turn. I thought I misunderstood, that my mind twisted the sound to fit my guilt. But last week I heard it again. Not muffled, not distorted, not fading into the rafters. It was clear, direct, a command. It's your turn. My blood went cold. I didn't even stay inside, I ran. But when I reached the clearing, the doors slammed shut behind me. Slammed so hard the snow shook from the trees. And when I turned back, they were breathing. The wood pulsed like a lung, pushing air against the snow, steaming it into mist. I should have kept running, but I didn't. I stood there, watching, waiting. Like some part of me wanted the doors to open again, like I needed them to. Because if the door wasn't meant for me, then who was it meant for? The answer came sooner than I expected. That night, in my own house, I woke to the sound of hinges groaning. I sat up, heart pounding, and saw my bedroom door slowly drift open. Behind it, nothing but dark. But in that dark, I swore I saw the shape of the church door, wide and tall, filling the frame. And from the hallway came the whisper, "We're still waiting." I haven't slept since. I can't, because I realized something. I never buried my friend. The church did, or maybe it didn't. Maybe it just kept them, preserved them, fed on them. And now, after all these years, it wants me to join them. But here's where it gets worse. I don't think it just wants me. 2 nights ago, I drove up to the mountain again. I told myself I'd burn it down, scatter the ashes, erase the church from the earth. I brought gasoline, matches, even a shovel, though I couldn't tell you why. Maybe I thought I'd find something buried. Maybe I thought I'd prove myself wrong. When I got there, the doors were already open, waiting. I poured the gasoline on the steps, struck the match, and threw it. Flames roared up, hot and wild, catching on dry wood. For a moment I felt powerful, like I'd finally taken control. But then the doors exhaled. One long, steady breath. The fire guttered, bent backward, and died as if someone had sucked the oxygen straight out of the air. Smoke curled and then silence. Not even embers. And from inside the darkness came a voice I hadn't heard in years. "You shouldn't have left me." It was theirs. My friends, not an echo, not distorted, not imagined. Their voice, alive, calling from inside. I dropped the matches. My legs gave out. I crawled toward the door like a child, begging, whispering. I didn't mean to. And the reply came sharp, clear, undeniable. "Then come in." I didn't. Not that night. I staggered back to my car, drove home, shaking, half blind with tears. But the words followed me, humming in my ears, vibrating in my chest. "Then come in." Do you see what I mean? The door was never mine. It was theirs all along. They belong to it, or it belongs to them. I can't tell which. And me? I've been nothing but an intruder, a coward hovering outside pretending I had a choice. But last night I dreamed. I dreamed I was back at the church, kneeling at the altar. My friend was sitting in the front pew, head bowed, whispering prayers I couldn't understand. When they lifted their face, their eyes weren't eyes anymore. They were doorways. 2 heavy wooden doors breathing in unison. And when they blinked, the entire church inhaled. I woke screaming. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The church is pulling me, calling me, and I'm tired of fighting. Sometimes, in the quiet moments, I think about how easy it would be to just let go, to step inside, to stop running. But then I remember the scream, that last day, the cut-off cry that's haunted me ever since. And I wonder, was that their end or their beginning? If I step through, will I scream the same way? Or will I finally understand what they saw? What they meant when they whispered, "It's so bright in here." Maybe that's the truth. Maybe the church isn't a tomb. Maybe it's a door to somewhere else. Somewhere my friend has been waiting all this time, and maybe that's why the doors never stay shut. They aren't keeping something in. They're holding themselves open. For me, I don't know if I'll make another recording. I don't know if I'll come back down the mountain this time. But if you're watching this, if you're listening to me right now, don't come looking for me. Don't follow the trail. Don't try to find the church, because if the doors breathe for you too, it means they've chosen you next. Story number 3. I swear I wasn't drunk that night. Everyone keeps saying I was, but tell me, how could I imagine something we all saw? The sky tearing open like a wound, the lights spilling down into the trees. The part nobody mentions is what happened after the lights stopped. But I'll tell you, if you promise not to repeat it. I shouldn't even be telling you this, but if I don't, someone else will twist it. People always twist things in Black Hollow. The story you've heard, the one where I was drunk, stumbling through the pines, seeing things that weren't there. That's not the truth. Or maybe it is, depending on who you ask. But I swear to you, the lights were real. I wasn't the only one who saw them. The night it happened, the air was sharp, like it carried an electric charge. The sky was darker than usual, no stars, just a low, heavy black pressing down. And then, like someone had slit the clouds with a knife, the sky opened. Not with thunder, not with lightning, with colors, a wound of shifting light, bleeding green and red, and a strange silver that shimmered down into the trees of the hollow. I remember standing there, my breath caught, thinking maybe the world was ending. My hands were shaking, but not from drink. No matter what they say, I wasn't drunk that night, not even a drop. The bottle, well, all right, yes, I had a bottle earlier, but I didn't touch it. I kept it with me because I needed the courage. You don't walk into Black Hollow at midnight without something to hold on to. Everyone in town knows that. I wasn't alone. That part's true. I won't say their name. Not yet. They wouldn't want me to. It's not safe to say it out loud. Not with everything that followed. Let's just call them my companion. We'd walked out to the ridge together, away from the noise of the town's Friday night bar crowd, just to breathe, or maybe to hide. I asked them if they saw it too, the lights. They didn't answer right away, and for a second I thought maybe it was just me, that maybe the stories about the hollow getting inside your head were true. But then they grabbed my arm so hard their nails dug into my skin. I still had the crescent marks the next morning. So yes, they saw it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. When the lights began to dance, weaving over the treetops, the air shifted. It wasn't just a glow, it was movement, like the forest itself was breathing, like the branches bent toward the sky, reaching for whatever hung above. There was a sound too, low droning, almost like a hum that settled into my bones. The kind of sound you feel before you hear. Words spread fast. By morning the whole town was buzzing. Some swore it was the northern lights, though no one could explain why they'd show up so far south. Others said it was swamp gas or military flares. People loved their explanations, tidy little boxes to shove the unknown into. But I heard the whispers. I saw the faces of those who'd been there. They weren't convinced. They were scared. Here's the thing no one tells you. Everyone saw something different. Old Mrs. Dillard said the lights spelled words across the sky, though she couldn't read them. Sheriff Grayson swore it was nothing but a firework gone wrong. Kids at the high school swore they saw figures moving inside the light. And me? Well, I saw something else. Something I've never put into words. Something I'm not sure I can put into words. That's the problem. No one agrees on what really happened. And when no one agrees, the easiest story to believe is that I made it all up. That I was drunk. That I dragged my companion out into the hollow for God knows what reason and invented the rest. I can still hear the laughter from that first day after. People nudging each other in the diner, whispering when I walked in. There goes Hollow's prophet, they said. Better hide your whiskey. He might start seeing angels again. But the look in my companion's eyes, no laughter there. They didn't speak about it, not even once. But the way their face drained of color told me all I needed. They were afraid, and I couldn't stop thinking about the way the lights bent downward, the way they seemed to follow us, to notice us. There was something personal about it, like the sky itself had reached into the hollow for us. That night, when I tried to sleep, the afterimage of those lights burned behind my eyelids. Every time I closed my eyes, they pulsed, drawing me back to the ridge. I sat up in bed, trembling, half tempted to go back outside to see if they were still there. But I didn't, because I knew if I went back alone, they'd think I'd gone crazy, and maybe I had. The days that followed split the town right down the middle, believers and skeptics. I watched friendships dissolve, families argue. Some claimed it was a miracle, a sign. Others said it was nonsense, and anyone who spread the story was dangerous, stirring panic. I tried to stay quiet, but word kept circling back, and somehow my name was always tied to it. The drunk in the woods, the liar who saw colors in the sky. People started to ask me questions I didn't want to answer. Questions about who I was with that night. Questions about why we were there. I told them nothing, because the truth, that secret, would have ruined everything. You see, that night wasn't just about the lights. The Hollow already had a reputation, sure, but for me it was about something else entirely. Something human, something I'd gone there to keep hidden. The lights only made it worse. The lights shined where they weren't supposed to. And I still think that's why it happened, why it followed us, because the Hollow doesn't forget, and it doesn't forgive. When the lights came back, they didn't just shimmer in the sky. They took something, or someone, but that's not this chapter. That's later. For now, all I can say is, those lights weren't a trick, or a dream, or a drunken blur. They were real, and they knew our names. You want to know what happened after the lights? Fine. But you need to understand, what I'm about to tell you isn't the story the town tells. It isn't the story the sheriff wrote in his report. It isn't even the story I gave the first time they asked me. This is something else, and if you don't believe me, then maybe you'll believe the silence that still hangs over Black Hollow, even now. The second night the lights returned, everything changed. It was 3 days later. The first sighting had nearly torn the town apart. Half the folks calling it a miracle, the other half calling me a drunk fool stirring up trouble. By then, I was already avoiding the diner, the gas station, anywhere people could corner me with their questions. I just stayed home, curtains drawn, but my companion, they couldn't leave it alone. They came knocking on my door that evening, frantic, their voice low but urgent. They're back. You need to see this. I told them no. I told them I was done with the Hollow, done with lights and rumors and people whispering my name, but they wouldn't let it go. Their hand shook on my arm, the same way it had on the ridge that first night. I knew then, whether I went or not, they were heading into the woods, and I couldn't let them go alone. That was my mistake. The air was colder that night, sharper, like the Hollow itself had changed. We walked the same path through the pines, but it didn't feel the same. The trees leaned inward, closing us off. My companion didn't speak, not at first, just kept their eyes forward like something was pulling them deeper. I wanted to ask what they hoped to find, but the words stuck in my throat. Then I saw it again, the sky opening, that wound of shifting color, bleeding silver and green. Only this time, it wasn't above the ridge. It was lower, closer, hanging just above the treetops, as if it had dropped down to meet us. The hum started again, that low vibration crawling into my chest. My knees almost buckled under it. My companion whispered, "Do you hear that?" And I nodded, though my ears were ringing so hard I could barely think. And then they stepped forward. Just one step, but it was enough. The lights shifted, bending toward them, wrapping them in that glow. I swear to you, it looked like the hollow had chosen them. I shouted their name. Yes, I'm not saying it here, not yet. But I screamed it that night until my throat burned. They didn't turn around. They didn't even flinch. They just kept walking, slowly, steadily, toward the trees where the colors spilled like liquid light. I ran after them, grabbed their jacket, yanked hard. For a second they snapped out of it, their eyes wide, terrified. But then something shifted. Their face went blank, calm, as if they were listening to something I couldn't hear. They whispered, "It's calling me." And then they were gone. Not gone like ran off. Not gone like I lost them in the dark. Gone. One moment I was holding their sleeve. The next my hand was clutching air. The lights pulsed brighter, the hum deepened, and when my eyes adjusted, nothing. No footsteps, no rustling, no body, just me, standing in the hollow, screaming into the trees like a madman. I don't remember how long I stood there. Minutes? Hours? My throat was raw, my legs numb. And then, just as suddenly as it came, the sky sealed up. The lights vanished. The hollow went quiet. And I was alone. By dawn, the town knew. Someone must have heard me stumbling back down the road, shouting nonsense, begging for help. Sheriff Grayson found me half collapsed at the edge of town, covered in dirt and scratches. I tried to explain, I really did. I told him the lights took them. I told him I saw it happen. Do you know what he wrote in his report? Last seen with narrator. Witness admits to drinking. Companion presumed missing in the woods. That was it. No mention of the lights, no mention of the hum, no mention of the way the air itself split open. Just me, always me. The search parties went out for 3 days. Dogs, flashlights, volunteers. They combed the hollow until their boots wore thin. But they found nothing. Not a shoe, not a torn piece of fabric. People stopped looking after that, the town whispered. Some said my companion ran away, that they'd been planning it all along. Others said I'd finally snapped, that I'd done something to them and made up the lights to cover it. The worst part? Some days I almost believed them. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying it over and over. The way their bodies seemed to dissolve into the glow, the way their voice whispered that it was calling them. Did I imagine it? Did my mind twist what really happened into something else? But then I'd see the marks on my arm where their nails had dug in, proof they'd been there, proof I wasn't alone, proof I wasn't drunk. Still, when the sheriff called me in, sat me down under those buzzing fluorescent lights, he didn't want my proof. He wanted my confession. "Tell me the truth," he said. "You two went out there to drink, didn't you? Maybe you argued. Maybe things got out of hand. You were the last to see them. Just admit it." I kept shaking my head. I told him about the lights, about the hum, about how the sky bent down and swallowed them. His eyes just hardened, jaw clenched. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and muttered, "Do you hear yourself?" That was the last time he questioned me. After that, I stopped leaving the house. The stares were too much, the whispers worse. Murderer, liar, crazy. My companion's family stopped speaking to me altogether. And the worst part? I couldn't even defend myself. Not properly. Because how do you explain something no one else agrees on? How do you prove something when everyone saw something different? Weeks passed. Then months. The official story hardened. I'd been drinking. We argued. They ran. End of story. But every time I close my eyes, I see it. The light wrapping around them. The way their voice slipped into something not entirely their own. And deep down, I know, they didn't run. They were taken, and maybe, just maybe, they wanted to be. That's the thought that eats at me most. That they weren't afraid in that final moment. That blank, calm face, that whisper. It's calling me. What if they wanted it? What if the hollow offered them something I couldn't? Sometimes I hear their voice in my sleep, faint and distant, carried on that low hum. Sometimes I wake up with the curtains rattling, like the air is vibrating again. And sometimes I swear I see that silver shimmer at the edge of the trees. The town will tell you they disappeared, but I know better. You don't just disappear. You're taken, and if you wait long enough, the hollow always comes back for more. They say time heals everything. That's a lie. Time doesn't heal, it rots. It decays what's left of you until all you have are scraps of memory, eaten through, barely recognizable. That's what Black Hollow did to me. That's what those lights did. It's been years since the night my companion vanished, but sometimes I feel like I never left. Sometimes I wake up in this small apartment miles away and still expect to hear the wind through those trees, that low vibration humming in my bones. And sometimes I really do hear it. People think I ran because I was guilty. They'll tell you I left town because I couldn't stand the whispers, the stares, the accusations. Maybe they're right. Maybe I did run, but I didn't run from them. I ran from the hollow itself, because the hollow remembers. When I finally came back years later, it wasn't for closure. Don't mistake this for some heroic return. I came back because I couldn't fight it anymore. The pull. The way those lights kept burning behind my eyes. The way their voice still whispered in my dreams. I told myself it was about finding answers, but deep down I knew I wasn't looking for truth. I was looking for them. Black Hollow hadn't changed much. The same boarded up shops, the same sagging porches, the same faces watching me from windows. Only now those faces looked older, wearier, and colder when they saw me. Some crossed the street when I passed, others spat at the ground. The sheriff's gone grey, but when I walked into the diner, he muttered the same word under his breath he used years ago. Murderer. But here's the thing. You can call me what you want. Liar. Drunk. Murderer. It doesn't matter, because when the sun dipped that first night back, I saw it again. The sky tore open above the hollow. Same colours. Same pulsing glow. Same impossible hum rattling through the trees. And just like before, no one agreed on what they saw. A couple swore it was just car headlights bouncing off the hills. A boy said he saw shapes moving inside the light. The sheriff said it was swamp gas. He's always loved that one. Me? I saw what I'd always seen. A wound in the sky, bleeding something we weren't meant to understand. But this time, it wasn't the light itself that terrified me. It was what came after. Because I wasn't alone. I was standing by the ridge, the very spot where my companion vanished, when I heard it. A voice. Their voice, whispering my name. At first I thought I was losing it. I even laughed out loud, trying to shake it off. But then the voice came again, stronger, clearer. Come closer. I wanted to run. I really did. But my legs didn't move. I felt that same pull they must have felt years ago. Like the hollow had hooked something inside me and was reeling me in. I told myself it was a trick of memory, my brain recycling trauma. But when the voice said, "I've been waiting for you," my knees buckled, because it wasn't just memory, it was them, or something wearing their voice. The lights pulsed, brighter this time, almost blinding. I raised my hand to shield my eyes, and in that moment, I swear, I saw a figure inside the glow, their silhouette. The same shape, the same posture I'd memorized, but they weren't human anymore. Too tall, too thin, limbs bending at angles no body should bend. But the face, it was theirs, hollowed, stretched, but undeniably theirs. And the smile, God, the smile, wide, unbroken, unnatural. They didn't move toward me. They didn't need to. The air itself bent, pulling me forward. Every step I took felt like it wasn't mine. My heart hammered, but my body obeyed. And then, just like years before, the light vanished. I collapsed onto the ridge, gasping, clutching at the dirt. When I looked up, the sky was empty, black, silent. But I wasn't alone. There were footprints beside mine, fresh, leading into the hollow. That's when I knew the truth. The hollow hadn't just remembered me. It had been waiting, watching, and now it wanted me too. I staggered back into town that night, but no one believed me. Not that I expected them to. They said I'd fallen off the wagon, that I was drinking again. They laughed in my face, the same way they always had. But when I showed them the footprints, their laughter died quick, because those weren't my boots, and yet still, no one agreed. Some said they were animal tracks. Some said they were old prints I'd dug up myself. Everyone had an explanation, except the one that mattered. The hollow remembers, and it takes who it wants. Now, I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see their face, stretched and wrong, whispering my name. Every time I hear the hum in the walls, I know the lights are closer. And every night, I wonder if tonight is the night they'll finally take me to. Do I want that? I don't know anymore. Maybe it would be easier to give in. Maybe that's why my companion looked so calm when they vanished. Maybe it isn't death. Maybe it's something else. Or maybe that's just what the hollow wants me to think. Last night, I woke up to the sound of humming outside my window. Not the wind, not the fridge, that low, rattling hum I've carried in my chest for years. When I pulled the curtain back, I saw it. Not in the distance, not above the trees, right there. A silver shimmer, bleeding through the glass, pulsing like a heartbeat. And a shadow, tall, thin, wrong, smiling. They found me. After all these years, the hollow came knocking. So if you're watching this, if you've made it this far into my story, remember what I told you. Don't go into the hollow. Don't follow the lights. Don't listen when they call your name. Because the hollow doesn't forget. And once it remembers you, it never lets go. Story number 04. When Grandma died, she left us the house. But she made me promise one thing. Never open the cellar. She said it was the reason we were still alive. And the strange part? I believed her. Even now. Especially now because I think I finally understand what she meant. You're not going to believe me when I tell you this. But the first night I stepped into Grandma's old farmhouse, I swear the cellar door was already breathing. I know houses don't breathe, but the way the woods seemed to expand and contract, as if air was moving in and out of it. It was like the whole place had lungs of its own. And the strange thing is, I didn't run. I just stood there in the dark, holding the keys she'd left me in her will, and whispered the same words she used to say. Keep it shut. Keep us safe. That was the night I moved in. The house sat crouched at the edge of the Appalachian woods, hidden behind pines that swallowed the last traces of daylight before it even reached the porch. I'd only visited as a kid, always during the day, when Grandma would keep the curtains drawn and a pot of something bitter-smelling simmering on the stove. Back then, I thought her house was just old. Now, standing in it alone, I realized it wasn't just old, it was waiting. Grandma's death was sudden, or maybe it wasn't. No one had seen her for weeks before a neighbor finally called it in. I was the one who got the keys, the deed, and, most importantly, the warning. Her voice still echoes in my head. Don't open the cellar. Never open the cellar. It's the only reason we're still alive. I laughed when she first said it years ago, but she didn't laugh with me. She gripped my wrist so tightly her knuckles went white. I never forgot the look in her eyes, like she was watching a fire only she could see. That warning returned to me the moment I crossed the threshold. The air was cold, though it was late summer. Dust drifted in the golden stripes of sunlight that managed to sneak through the boarded-up windows. The floorboards creaked under my boots, and with every step I expected her voice to call out from the kitchen. But it didn't. The house was mine now, and the silence felt heavier than ownership. I tried to settle in, set down my bags, clear a space in the living room. but my eyes kept drifting toward the hallway that led to the cellar door. It was just a rectangle of dark wood at the end of the corridor, but it pulled at me like a magnet. When I was a kid, that door might as well have been the gates of hell. I'd wake up at night in the guest room and swear I heard footsteps under the floorboards, shuffling, dragging. Once I asked Grandma what was down there. She told me only one word: promise. I didn't know what she meant. Maybe I still don't. That first night, I tried to ignore the house's quirks. Old pipes rattled. The windows groaned when the wind pushed against them. I told myself the smell of damp earth was just mildew. But as midnight settled in, the air grew colder, and I heard it, the faintest scratching, like claws tracing circles just beneath my feet. I froze, every muscle locking in place. It was so soft I thought I imagined it, but then it came again. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Right beneath the living room floorboards. I pressed my palm flat against the wood. It felt cold, too cold. I pulled away fast and told myself it was mice or rats, the kind of pests you'd expect in an old country house. But deep down, I knew that sound was bigger, hungrier. Sleep didn't come easy. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd picture Grandma standing at the foot of my bed whispering, "Keep it shut. Keep us safe." By morning, sunlight made everything seem harmless again. I walked the property, checked the shed, even went down to the root cellar outside, completely separate from the cellar. That one was just filled with rusted tools and jars of spoiled preserves, harmless. But the door inside the house, it loomed. I avoided that hallway all day, convincing myself I was too busy cleaning, dusting shelves, throwing out rotted food, scrubbing counters that hadn't been touched in years. Still, every so often, I'd catch a glimpse of that door in the corner of my eye. I thought I saw it shift once, as though it leaned toward me when I wasn't looking. I laughed at myself out loud. Stop it, you're tired, you're just seeing things. But that night, things got worse. Around 2 a.m., I woke to a draft. My bedroom window was shut, but the curtain fluttered like a breath was passing through. And underneath it all, I heard the scratching again, only louder this time. It travelled, moving from the kitchen through the hall until it stopped right beneath my bed. I didn't move. I just lay there with my heart pounding so hard I could hear the blood in my ears. Then it stopped, as suddenly as it began. The silence was even worse. I told myself to count to 10, that I'd get up, flip on the lights, and laugh at how silly I was being. But before I reached 5, I heard something new. A voice. It was soft, cracked, but unmistakable. It said my name. My throat went dry. No one knew I was here yet. No one alive, at least. The voice drifted up through the floorboards, rising from the exact direction of the cellar. I sat up, every nerve in my body screaming to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. Instead, I whispered back, "Grandma," the voice answered. Not with words, just a laugh. And that was when I knew. I'd have to face the cellar sooner or later. You ever have a memory that doesn't feel like it belongs to you? Like a dream someone else whispered into your head? That's what kept happening after the cellar whispered my name. The next morning I couldn't eat, couldn't think straight. I sat at Grandma's old kitchen table staring at a bowl of oatmeal until it turned cold. The scratches and the laugh from the cellar should have sent me packing, but instead it did the opposite. It hooked into me. I had to know what she'd been hiding all those years. The house wasn't just wood and plaster anymore. It was a mouth that held a secret between its teeth, daring me to pry it open. I started digging. Not in the cellar, not yet. I wasn't ready for that. I dug into the past instead. Old photos, letters stuffed in drawers, her handwritten recipes stained with what I prayed was sauce. Some of the letters weren't hers at all. They were addressed to her, from people I didn't know. People who wrote about promises kept, about debts still owed. One letter simply said, "You'll hear them scratching. Do not answer. It wasn't signed. I shoved the papers back in the drawer, my pulse racing. It could have been a prank. It could have been nonsense. But the sound of scratching in my head told me otherwise. That's when I decided to call my sister. You'll probably ask, why didn't she come to the funeral? Why didn't she take the house instead of me? The truth is, she wanted nothing to do with it. With Grandma, with her rules, with the darkness that hung around this family, like a smell you couldn't wash out. But I needed answers. So I dialed. Don't tell me you're living there, she said the second she picked up. There was no hello, no how are you, just that. I am, I admitted. It's fine. You're lying, she snapped. I can hear it in your voice. Something's already wrong. Her words cut deep because she knew me better than anyone. My throat tightened. Do you remember the cellar? Silence stretched on the other end. Then a sharp inhale. You didn't open it, did you? No, I whispered. Not yet. Another silence. This one heavier, charged. I used to hear her at night, my sister finally said, dragging things down those steps. Heavy things. I thought it was just firewood, but sometimes I swear I heard it cry. Her voice cracked. You never told me that, I said. You never asked. She shot back. You were Grandma's favorite. She told you things she didn't tell me. That stung. Mostly because it was true. I remembered sitting on Grandma's lap when I was small, her whispering prayers in my ear that didn't sound like any prayers I'd ever heard in church. Words that curled on her tongue like smoke. Look, she said finally, her voice breaking. You need to leave that place. Don't try to be a hero. She kept it shut for a reason. If you open it, the call dropped. Not like she hung up. More like silence swallowed the line. I pulled the phone away from my ear and stared at the screen. But there was still a timer counting up. She was there, listening. I hung up. The house groaned around me, settling its weight. Or maybe it was laughing again. I couldn't tell anymore. That night, I dreamt of Grandma. She was standing at the foot of my bed, holding something in her hands. A Bible. She opened it, and inside wasn't scripture. It was a key. She held it out to me, her face pale and tight, and whispered, "Blood keeps it shut." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The room smelled faintly of iron. The dream wouldn't leave me, so I went looking. I tore through the house like a madman, pulling books off shelves, yanking open drawers. I finally found her Bible in the nightstand of her old bedroom. The leather cover was cracked, the pages yellowed. At first, it looked normal. Psalms, Proverbs, all the usual. But the deeper I flipped, the stranger it got. Some passages were underlined, but not the comforting ones. No, she underlined verses about sacrifice, about blood, about lambs slain, and doors marked so death would pass over. My hands shook as I reached the end of the book, and there it was, a small iron key, rusted with age, taped between the last page and the back cover. The instant I touched it, I felt the house change. Like it exhaled, a weight shifted. Floorboards creaked in relief. Or anticipation. I stumbled back, clutching the Bible to my chest. And then, the scratching started again. Not faint this time, not distant. It clawed against the cellar door with frantic hunger, wood splintering under the force. But instead, I found myself walking toward the hallway, the key digging into my palm like it wanted to be used. The cellar door waited at the end, taller and darker than I remembered. The scratching stopped the moment I stood before it. Silence. I pressed my ear against the wood, breath shallow. For a second I thought I heard nothing. Then, in a voice that wasn't quite Grandma's, wasn't quite mine, it whispered, "We've been waiting." I staggered back, clutching the key tighter. That was the moment I knew. Whatever was down there wasn't just some family secret. It wasn't just superstition. It was blood. It was legacy, and now it was calling me. You ever notice how keys feel heavier when you know what they open? That little iron thing in my hand was no bigger than my thumb, but it dragged at me like a stone around my neck. For 2 days, I tried to ignore it. I tucked it back in Grandma's Bible, shoved it under a pile of boxes, even told myself I'd throw it in the creek. But no matter where I hid it, the house reminded me. The scratching grew louder at night. The smell of damp iron and rot spread through every room. And the silence. Oh, the silence pressed on me like a hand over my mouth. By the 3rd night, I stopped pretending. I sat on the floor of the hallway, right in front of the cellar door, Bible on my lap, key in my palm. The wood breathed slow and steady against my back, almost like it was syncing with my heartbeat, and then I heard it. A voice, not just whispering this time, clear, fragile. Please, help me. It wasn't Grandma. It wasn't anything old or monstrous. It sounded like me. I don't mean similar. I mean exactly. My voice. The way I would beg if I were trapped somewhere dark and starving. That's when I stopped fighting. My hand moved before my brain caught up. The key slid into the lock like it had been waiting all this time, and the door gave a low moan as it opened. The air that hit me was thick, damp, metallic. It carried the stink of rust, blood, and something sweet like spoiled fruit. My flashlight beam cut into the dark, catching stone steps slick with condensation. Every part of me screamed to stop, but my legs moved anyway. Step after step I descended. Each creak of the wood above me faded until the house was gone, and it was just me, the dark, and the sound of dripping water echoing off stone. At the bottom, the cellar widened into a chamber I didn't remember from childhood. It wasn't just a storage space, it was prepared. The walls were carved with strange marks, symbols that writhed when my light swept over them. The floor was dirt, but packed hard, stained dark. And there, scattered across the room, were remnants. Children's toys half buried in the soil, a small shoe, mold creeping across the leather, a rusted knife laid neatly on a stone slab. Bones, so many bones, piled in corners like discarded kindling, some human, some not. My stomach heaved, but I couldn't look away, and then I saw it. In the center of the chamber, hunched against the far wall, was a figure. At first, I thought it was just a mirror trick, my light bouncing wrong. But no, it was someone, thin, pale, knees drawn to chest, arms wrapped tight. Its hair hung in greasy tangles over its face, and then it lifted its head. My knees buckled. It was me. Not just similar, identical. My own face, but gaunt, hollow-eyed, lips cracked and trembling. Please, it whispered. You have to let me out. My throat went dry. What are you? It crawled toward me on hands and knees, and the dirt shifted under its fingers like it knew the way too well. I'm you, it said. The part she locked away, the part that remembers. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking in my grip. That's not possible, I whispered. I'm right here. I'm not whole. The thing's smile was crooked, wrong, but familiar. She kept me down here. She said the family would be safe if the hunger stayed buried. But hunger doesn't stay buried forever. I shook my head so hard my vision blurred. No, you're lying. You're just something she trapped. A curse. I'm your blood, it interrupted. I'm the promise, and you broke it when you turned the key. My chest tightened. I wanted to run, but my feet sank heavy into the dirt. My light flickered, and for a second I saw dozens of faces behind it. Not just mine. Echoes of others. Generations. Each one twisted in agony, each one looking straight at me with the same eyes. I screamed, stumbling back toward the stairs, but the door at the top slammed shut with a boom that rattled the chamber. The figure laughed. It was my laugh, hollow and broken. You can't close it now, it said. Once you've seen, it's yours to keep. I pounded up the steps anyway, slamming my fists against the wood, screaming for someone, anyone, to hear me. The smell of rot pressed close, the air thick as syrup. Then came the scratching again, not from behind the door this time, from inside the cellar, from all around me. Nails on stone, claws on dirt, voices whispering promises, and prayers that didn't belong to me. And through it all, my double's voice rose above the rest. Blood keeps it shut. Blood keeps it safe. Which one of us bleeds this time? My hand throbbed where the key had cut into my palm, a thin line of blood running down my wrist. The figure tilted its head, smiling wider. "That'll do." The chamber shook. The walls seemed to close in, symbols pulsing like veins. The faces in the dark leaned closer, mouths opening too wide. I don't remember dropping the flashlight, but suddenly I was in darkness. Just the sound of breathing, mine and not mine, filling the space. The last thing I saw before the light died completely was the figure's face pressed inches from mine, whispering words I can't repeat, words that felt like they carved themselves into my skin. And then, nothing. I woke hours later at the foot of the cellar stairs, the door wide open, morning light spilling in. The key was gone. The Bible was gone. The house felt lighter. But when I went to the mirror in the bathroom, I froze. There was dirt under my nails, blood on my lips, and in the corner of the reflection, just for a second, another me smiled back. So when people ask why I still live here, why I don't just leave and burn the place down, I tell them the truth. Because Grandma was right. The cellar keeps us safe. The only problem is, now I'm the one keeping it. I should have dropped the key. I should have burned the Bible, left the house, never looked back. But instead, I found myself walking toward the hallway, the key digging into my palm like it wanted to be used. The cellar door waited at the end, taller and darker than I remembered. The scratching stopped the moment I stood before it. Silence. I pressed my ear against the wood, breath shallow. For a second, I thought I heard nothing. Then, in a voice that wasn't quite Grandma's, wasn't quite mine, it whispered, "We've been waiting." I staggered back, clutching the key tighter. That was the moment I knew. Whatever was down there wasn't just some family secret. It wasn't just superstition. It was blood. It was legacy. And now, it was calling me. You ever notice how keys feel heavier when you know what they open? That little iron thing in my hand was no bigger than my thumb, but it dragged at me like a stone around my neck. For 2 days, I tried to ignore it. I tucked it back in Grandma's Bible, shoved it under a pile of boxes, even told myself I'd throw it in the creek. But no matter where I hid it, the house reminded me. The scratching grew louder at night. The smell of damp iron and rot spread through every room. And the silence. Oh, the silence pressed on me like a hand over my mouth. By the third night, I stopped pretending. I sat on the floor of the hallway, right in front of the cellar door, Bible on my lap, key in my palm. The wood breathed slow and steady against my back, almost like it was syncing with my heartbeat. And then I heard it. A voice. Not just whispering this time. Clear. Fragile. Please, help me. It wasn't Grandma. It wasn't anything old or monstrous. It sounded like me. I don't mean similar. I mean exactly. My voice, the way I would beg if I were trapped somewhere dark and starving. That's when I stopped fighting. My hand moved before my brain caught up. The key slid into the lock like it had been waiting all this time, and the door gave a low moan as it opened. The air that hit me was thick, damp, metallic. It carried the stink of rust, blood, and something sweet like spoiled fruit. My flashlight beam cut into the dark, catching stone steps slick with condensation. Every part of me screamed to stop, but my legs moved anyway. Step after step I descended. Each creak of the wood above me faded until the house was gone, and it was just me, the dark, and the sound of dripping water echoing off stone. At the bottom, the cellar widened into a chamber I didn't remember from childhood. It wasn't just a storage space, it was prepared. The walls were carved with strange marks, symbols that writhed when my light swept over them. The floor was dirt, but packed hard, stained dark. And there, scattered across the room, were remnants. Children's toys half buried in the soil, a small shoe, mold creeping across the leather, a rusted knife laid neatly on a stone slab, bones, so many bones, piled in corners like discarded kindling, some human, some not. My stomach heaved, but I couldn't look away. And then I saw it. In the center of the chamber, hunched against the far wall, was a figure. At first, I thought it was just a mirror trick, my light bouncing wrong. But no, it was someone. Thin, pale, knees drawn to chest, arms wrapped tight. Its hair hung in greasy tangles over its face, and then it lifted its head. My knees buckled. It was me. Not just similar, identical. My own face, but gaunt, hollow-eyed, lips cracked and trembling. "Please," it whispered. "You have to let me out." My throat went dry. What are you?" It crawled toward me on hands and knees, and the dirt shifted under its fingers like it knew the way too well. "I'm you," it said. The part she locked away, the part that remembers. I stumbled back, flashlight shaking in my grip. "That's not possible," I whispered. "I'm right here. I'm not whole." The thing's smile was crooked, wrong, but familiar. She kept me down here. She said the family would be safe if the hunger stayed buried. But hunger doesn't stay buried forever. I shook my head so hard my vision blurred. No, you're lying. You're just something she trapped. A curse. I'm your blood," it interrupted. "I'm the promise. And you broke it when you turned the key." My chest tightened. I wanted to run, but my feet sank heavy into the dirt. My light flickered, and for a second I saw dozens of faces behind it. Not just mine, echoes of others, generations, each one twisted in agony, each one looking straight at me with the same eyes. I screamed, stumbling back toward the stairs, but the door at the top slammed shut with a boom that rattled the chamber. The figure laughed. It was my laugh, hollow and broken. "You can't close it now," it said. "Once you've seen, it's yours to keep." I pounded up the steps anyway, slamming my fists against the wood, screaming for someone, anyone, to hear me. The smell of rot pressed close, the air thick as syrup. Then came the scratching again, not from behind the door this time, from inside the cellar, from all around me. Nails on stone, claws on dirt, voices whispering promises and prayers that didn't belong to me. And through it all, my double's voice rose above the rest. "Blood keeps it shut. Blood keeps it safe." Which one of us bleeds this time? My hand throbbed where the key had cut into my palm, a thin line of blood running down my wrist. The figure tilted its head, smiling wider. "That'll do." The chamber shook. The walls seemed to close in, symbols pulsing like veins. The faces in the dark leaned closer, mouths opening too wide. I don't remember dropping the flashlight, but suddenly I was in darkness. Just the sound of breathing. Mine, and not mine, filling the space. The last thing I saw before the light died completely was the figure's face pressed inches from mine, whispering words I can't repeat. Words that felt like they carved themselves into my skin, and then nothing. I woke hours later at the foot of the cellar stairs, the door wide open, morning light spilling in. The key was gone, the Bible was gone. The house felt lighter, but when I went to the mirror in the bathroom, I froze. There was dirt under my nails, blood on my lips, and in the corner of the reflection, just for a second, another me smiled back, So when people ask why I still live here, why I don't just leave and burn the place down, I tell them the truth, because Grandma was right. The cellar keeps us safe. The only problem is, now I'm the one key. They told me the ocean was empty, that nothing lived below 7 miles, but I've heard it breathe. I've felt it watching. And if I disappear after telling you this, just know the water wasn't silent. It never was. They told me the deep was quiet. That's the first lie I ever believed. Because the moment we crossed 6 miles down, I heard it. Something like breathing. Something that wasn't the ocean. And it hasn't stopped since. I need you to understand this part clearly, before anything else I say later starts to sound insane. People think of submarines as machines of silence, sealed steel tubes slipping through darkness. And yes, silence is part of it, but it's the wrong kind. It's not peaceful. It's the kind of silence that sharpens every creak of the hull until you swear it's bones breaking. The kind of silence where your heartbeat feels loud enough to wake whatever might be sleeping out there. The descent was supposed to be routine. That's what I kept telling myself as I strapped in. I'd made dives before, never this deep, but enough to know the drill. Still, when the hatch sealed shut and the world above was cut away, I felt it. That old pressure in my chest that had nothing to do with depth. Captain Rourke noticed it too, though he didn't say much. He never did. He was the kind of man who led through silence, letting you fill in the blanks with your own fear. Routine run, he muttered, flipping switches with steady hands. We're not here to find monsters, just readings. Remember that. It should have comforted me. It didn't. We dropped. Mile 1, 2, 3. At that depth, sunlight still glimmers faintly, a blue haze like the ghost of day. But once we passed 4 miles, the light was gone for good. Blackness folded in around us, thick and absolute. That's when I started thinking about the pressure. 7 tons pressing on every square inch of steel. A fortress, they call it. But all I could hear was metal groaning. Every sound felt wrong. I logged the descent into the operator's journal, keeping my voice even, mechanical. That's what they trained us for. But beneath the steady notes, my thoughts wouldn't stop. What if something out there hears us? At mile 5, the sonar blinked. Just once, a little blip, nothing significant. I logged it as equipment calibration. Rourke gave me a look, sharp, suspicious, but didn't argue. That was his way. Trust the system, not the man. By mile 6, I felt it. The deep isn't just water, it's weight. It presses against your skin, your ribs, your thoughts. I swear I could hear my own skull ringing with it. That was when I noticed the rhythm. Tap. Pause. Tap. Like something knocking against the hull. I didn't say anything. I wasn't ready to hear the captain call it imagination. Still, I wrote it in the log. Small, neat letters, hidden between routine numbers. If you read it now, you'd think it was a misprint. Maybe that's what I wanted. A secret no one else would catch. Rourke kept his eyes forward, steady on the controls. I envied him. He looked carved from stone, unmoved by the abyss. Sometimes I wondered if he really didn't hear it, or if he just refused to admit he did. We hit the Hadal zone at mile 7. No one speaks much at that point. There's a ritual silence, the kind you keep when crossing into a graveyard. The water outside was ink, shifting only when our floodlights pierced it. Every particle drifted like dust in a cathedral. Beautiful, if you forget how hostile it all is. That's when sonar blinked again. Not once, several times. Blips moving in a slow arc across the screen. Too big for fish, too erratic for debris. I leaned forward, trying not to sound alarmed. Sonar's picking something up, I said. My voice cracked on the last word. Rourke's hand landed heavy on my shoulder. Equipment fault. It happens in deep zones. Don't log it. But I said don't log it. His tone cut like a blade. I swallowed the words. Obedience was survival down here. Still, I couldn't ignore it. The shapes weren't static. They shifted, curved, almost like circling. Each time the screen refreshed, the blips were closer. I wanted to ask him again, but he was staring at the viewport, jaw clenched. For the first time, he looked uneasy. That was all the confirmation I needed. We sat in silence, minutes stretching long as years. Only the hum of the engines and the faint hiss of air circulation. Then, faint but clear, another sound. Not sonar, not machinery. A low, dragging exhale. I froze. My hand tightened on the journal, pen trembling. My instinct was to record it, but something inside me whispered not to, like writing it down would make it real, binding. Rourke must have sensed me listening. Focus on the mission, he muttered. You hear nothing, you see nothing. But I did. I heard it again. Longer this time. Like lungs straining against water that should have been impossible to breathe. And in that moment, I realized something. We weren't alone. The rest of the descent blurred. I wrote coordinates, depth, pressure, all routine, all meaningless. Beneath each word, fear dripped like ink. The sonar flickered every few minutes, but I stopped mentioning it. Rourke didn't want the truth written down, and maybe I didn't either. When we leveled out at trench floor, the sub steadied. Metal groans softened. The blackness outside felt thicker, as if pressing its face to our glass. I dared a glance at the viewport, half expecting to see something, I don't know what. An eye, a shadow, anything to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. There was nothing. Only drifting silt, slow as snowfall. I almost believed him then, that it was all stress, equipment error, imagination. Almost. But as I closed the journal, I felt it again. Not sound this time. Movement. The faintest vibration against my chair, travelling through the steel. Something brushed the sub, massive and deliberate. I looked at Rourke. His eyes were fixed on the viewport, unblinking. He didn't say a word, but his hands gripped the controls hard enough that his knuckles turned white. That was when I knew. He felt it too. We stayed at depth for hours, running scans, logging readings, pretending everything was normal. But beneath it all, a tension coiled tight. Rourke avoided my eyes. I avoided asking questions. That was our unspoken deal. Don't acknowledge what we both knew. Still, the sounds returned. Faint tapping, long exhales. Once, even what I swear was a laugh, distorted, dragged through water. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it seeped through the steel itself. When I finally risked another note in the log, I wrote only 4 words. It knows we're here. We began ascent protocol late into the shift. Engines roared softly, lifting us back toward a world with air and light. Relief should have settled in, but it didn't. Because as the sub tilted upward, sonar blinked again. Not behind us. Above. Waiting. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred, but Rourke snapped it off with a flick of his hand. The monitor went black. "Forget it," he said. His voice was low, almost a growl. "For your own sake." I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but his expression silenced me. And maybe he was right. Maybe some truth should stay buried. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. Breathing. Watching. And deep down, I knew the ascent wouldn't save us. Whatever was out there, it had already found us. The worst part wasn't the silence. It was realizing the silence wasn't empty at all. Something was in it, hiding, breathing, waiting for me to listen. I didn't sleep that first night. None of us were supposed to, not during trench operations, but I remember how the hours dragged on until they felt like years. The lights inside the sub hummed faintly, painting everything in a dim yellow that only made the shadows deeper. Rourke kept to his cabin, trusting me with night watch. Maybe he thought I could handle it. Maybe he wanted to see if I'd crack. The truth is, I already had. The tapping started again, softer this time. Not random. A pattern. Tap. Pause. Tap, tap. I leaned forward, pressing my ear to the cold steel. It was faint, like something brushing fingers across the hull from the outside. My rational mind screamed it was metal stress, the groaning of steel under pressure. But the rhythm was too deliberate, too human. I told myself not to write it down, but my hand was already moving, scrawling the words into the operator's journal. Tapping. 0214. Pattern. I stared at the ink until it blurred. I almost tore the page out. But no, I left it. A record. Proof. Because some part of me already knew that later, Rourke would deny it happened. Hours crawled by. I checked gauges, recalibrated sonar, sipped water from a steel flask that tasted faintly of rust. Each task should have grounded me, but instead, each sound of the machinery seemed off. Louder, sharper, almost mimicking something alive, and then it came again. Not tapping, breathing, slow, deep, dragging, as if something vast pressed its mouth against the hull, inhaling the stale air inside. My throat tightened. I froze, pen hovering above the journal. I waited for it again. 1 breath, 2, 3. The hairs on my arms rose. This wasn't imagination. It couldn't be. I stumbled to the captain's quarters, rapping my knuckles against the door. "Rourke, sir, are you awake?" A pause. Then his voice gravelly with irritation. "What is it? You don't hear that?" "Hear what?" "The breathing through the hull." Another pause. Then slowly. "Go back to your station, operator. The deep will play tricks on you if you let it. Don't." The door stayed shut. I stood there a long time staring at the sealed cabin. Either he was lying to me, or I was lying to myself. The next few shifts blurred together. Morning and night don't exist that far down. just cycles of duty, dim lamps, and the endless hum of engines. But my body knew when it was dark. Somehow the whispers were louder in the false nights. Yes, whispers. I can't pretend they were just taps anymore. I swear I heard voices. Sometimes they sounded like Rourke, muffled, calling from the far end of the sub when I knew he was asleep. Other times, it was stranger, words I couldn't understand, guttural and stretched like they weren't meant for human lungs. I stopped writing those down. Some things, even I didn't want proof of. On the third night, I caught Rourke watching me. He stood in the control room doorway, eyes hard, arms folded. "You've been jumpy," he said. "There's something out there." "There's nothing out there." His voice was sharp, cutting. "You keep saying it, you'll start believing it. That's how men lose themselves down here," I wanted to argue. Instead, I stared at the sonar, where faint static flickered across the screen. No shapes this time, just snow. "Routine run," he repeated, softer now. "Don't make it something it isn't." But when he left, I thought I heard him mutter under his breath, "Not again." The radio call came the following shift. "Surface check-in. Protocol. Surface to Abyss 1. Report status." Rourke answered first, his tone clipped. "All systems stable. Routine operations." I leaned close, snatching the mic. "Request clarification on sonar anomalies." Static filled the channel. Then a crackle, a voice I half recognized. "Anomalies. Negative. Abyss 1. No interference logged topside." I opened my mouth to respond when the signal cut. Abrupt, mid-sentence. Not static, not fade, just silence. I tapped the console, adjusted dials, flipped switches. Nothing. The channel was gone. Rourke's hand slammed down on the mic, ripping it from mine. His face was pale, eyes sharp. "Do not deviate from protocol again." "But they..." He leaned closer. His whisper was colder than the water outside. "They didn't cut out. Something cut them off. And if you ever say that over radio again, we'll both be dead men." After that, sleep was impossible. Even when exhaustion dragged at my skull, I couldn't close my eyes, because every time I did, I saw the black water pressing against the glass, and behind it, movement. Slow, watching. The whispers grew worse. I began to recognize words in them. My name, over and over, drawn out, distorted, like a rope pulling me deeper. One night, I pressed my ear so hard to the hull I thought the steel would split my skull. And I swear, God help me, I heard someone breathing with me, perfectly in sync, as if waiting for me to exhale so it could inhale. When I pulled back, my reflection in the viewport startled me, pale, hollow-eyed. But for a second, just a second, I thought the reflection moved differently, that it blinked when I didn't. By the fifth night, I was convinced the sub itself was alive. Every vibration, every creak of metal felt like a heartbeat, a pulse, and the deeper I listened, the more it sounded like a second one was beating, faint but steady beneath the first. I didn't tell Rourke. Not anymore. He watched me like I was unraveling. Maybe I was. Maybe he wanted me to. But then, one moment changed everything. I was logging readings when the tapping returned. Clear, sharp tap, pause, tap, tap, and then, in the narrow silence that followed, I heard something that froze my blood. A voice, childlike, whispering from beyond the hull. "Let me in." I stumbled back, knocking over my chair. Rourke stormed into the control room, eyes blazing. "What did you hear?" he demanded. I shook my head. "Nothing. Just stress. Hull shift." His jaw clenched. He didn't believe me, or maybe he did, and that was worse. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Do not listen to it. Do you understand? Whatever it says, it isn't for you." I wanted to scream, to demand answers. But before I could, the sonar blinked. A single blip pulsing steady right against our coordinates, not outside, not circling. Attached. Rourke's hand slammed the screen dark. "You didn't see that," he growled, but I had. And I knew something was already with us. It didn't appear on sonar first. It appeared in my head, like a shadow cast across thought before it touched the glass. By the time I saw it outside the viewport, I already knew it had been there all along. The blip on sonar from the night before should have disappeared by morning. At least, that's what I told myself. Steel contracts and expands. Signals bounce off rock. Shadows flicker on the edge of screens. That's all it should have been. But it didn't vanish. It stayed with us. Every time I checked the sonar, there it was, hovering just outside range. Too steady to be current. Too large to be anything I could explain. I told myself it was a phantom echo, a trick of water density. But phantoms don't move when you move. And this one did. I didn't tell Rourke. Not yet. I watched him drink his bitter coffee. Watched him check gauges. Watched him hum that tuneless song under his breath. I wanted to believe he didn't know, but deep down I was certain he did. By the second shift, I couldn't keep silent. The blip was closer, the size of it stretching across sonar like a smear of ink. "Captain," I said, voice too thin, "do you see this?" He didn't answer right away. He only glanced, then looked away, jaw tightening. "Equipment drift," he muttered. "It's moving," I insisted. "It's been moving with us." His eyes snapped back, colder now. "Do not log it," something inside me twisted. "But protocol will get you killed," he snapped. His voice cracked across the small cabin like a whip. "You want to write it down? Then when they find this journal, they'll call you unfit. They'll scrub the mission. They'll lock you in a room and call it therapy. Is that what you want?" I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. I tried to push the thought away, but the blip gnawed at me. Each time the sonar swept, it was there. Each time I blinked, I saw its outline painted on the back of my eyelids. And then, one cycle later, I saw it for real. It was my turn at the viewport. Not that there was much to see, only endless black, our lights casting cones of pale illumination through drifting silt. I stared anyway. Sometimes staring into nothing helps remind you that nothing is all there is. Except this time, something moved. A vast shadow, darker than the dark, sweeping across the edge of the light. It didn't dart like a fish, didn't drift like debris. It moved with weight, purpose. I stumbled back so hard I nearly hit the console. "Did you see that?" I gasped. Rourke didn't look up. He was writing in his log, methodical strokes of pen. "See what?" "There, out there, a shape. It passed right across." When I turned back, the water was empty again. Just blackness. Rourke's pen didn't stop moving. "You're tired. Stop chasing ghosts." I wanted to drag him to the glass, shake him until he admitted he'd seen it too. But I didn't, because part of me knew he had seen it, and he was lying. The silence between us thickened after that. He stopped speaking unless absolutely necessary. I stopped trusting my own eyes. Every flicker of shadow in the viewport felt alive. Every groan of the hull sounded like something brushing against it. At night, the whispers were louder. Sometimes they formed words. Closer. "Listen, you brought me here." I started writing them down, not in the logbook, but in a second notebook I kept hidden beneath my bunk. If Rourke ever found it, I knew he'd destroy it. He didn't want a record of what we were seeing, or what I was hearing. And that's when I began to wonder, who was he protecting? Me, the mission, or himself? The next confrontation came 3 nights later. I was staring at sonar again, unable to look away from the slow, deliberate arc of the shadow. "It's bigger than us," I whispered, before I realized I'd spoken aloud. Rourke's hand slammed down on the console beside me. "You will not log it." I met his eyes for the first time in days. "It's real." "Then stop feeding it." "What do you mean?" His face was stone. "The more attention you give it, the closer it gets." I laughed, sharp and bitter. "That's insane." "No," he said. "That's survival." That was when I wrote the words that still haunt me. Rourke wasn't afraid of the deep. He was afraid of me. I didn't know why I wrote it. Maybe I sensed it already. The way he looked at me, not like a comrade, but like a liability. Maybe he thought I'd brought this thing with me. Maybe he wasn't wrong. Because the truth is, I hadn't told him everything. I hadn't told him that before the mission, during training dives, I'd already heard the whispers, faint, like an echo in my own head. I thought it was stress, but what if it wasn't? What if it had chosen me then and followed me here? The first time I saw the shape fully, I nearly screamed. I'd leaned too close to the viewport, eyes straining into the dark, and then the light caught it, just the edge, a curve, smooth, black, stretching beyond the beam in both directions. No scales, no fins, just skin, endless pulsing skin, and then it moved. The entire wall of blackness shifted past, silent and slow, like a continent sliding through water. I staggered back, heart pounding. "Captain!" Rourke didn't move. "Captain, it's right there." Still nothing. I turned to him and saw his eyes squeeze shut. Fists clenched so tight his knuckles bled white. He didn't need to look. He already knew. The days after that blurred. I couldn't eat, could barely breathe. Every time I blinked, I saw it again. The impossible scale of it, gliding just beyond reach. Sonar readings were useless now. They flickered, warped, scrambled into nonsense. I logged the data anyway, though half of it was lies, invented numbers to cover the truth. Rourke didn't stop me. Maybe he wanted me to lose credibility. One night, I woke to find him standing over me, watching. His face half in shadow, eyes unreadable. "You're feeding it," he whispered. "What are you talking about?" "You listen. You write." "That's enough." I sat up, trembling. "You think I'm making it stronger?" His silence was answer enough. I tried to stop writing. I really did, but the whispers didn't stop. And when I ignored them, they grew louder, until they weren't whispers at all, but roars, low, dragging, like the weight of the ocean itself pressing into my ears. Sometimes I thought I could feel its thoughts, not words, images, darkness stretching forever, an eye opening, my body breaking under pressure, and worse, Rourke's face, pale and broken, floating in black water. The last time I looked out the viewport that chapter, I swore I saw its eye, not glowing, not blinking, just vast and unblinking, black on black, filling the glass. I don't know how long I stared, long enough for my breath to fog the pain, long enough for my heartbeat to sync with something deeper. When I finally tore my gaze away, Rourke was standing behind me. He shook his head slowly. "You shouldn't have looked." I woke up to voices in the corridor, but there weren't supposed to be any. Rourke and I were the only ones left, and yet, I swear on my life, someone laughed just outside my door. At first I thought it was a dream. The sound was too soft, too human to belong here, in steel wrapped by miles of pressure. A laugh followed by footsteps. My heart lurched, and for a long moment I lay frozen, staring at the ceiling, too afraid to move. When I finally opened the hatch, the corridor was empty. The hum of the engines was steady, the lights pale and flickering, but the sound of the footsteps lingered, echoing in my head, mocking me. By the time I reached the mess hall, I wasn't alone. A man was sitting at the table, sleeves rolled to the elbows, grease smeared across his face. He was eating something out of a dented can, chewing loudly, as though nothing about this situation was strange. "Morning," he said, nodding to me with a grin that felt too casual. I froze in the doorway, because I knew, absolutely knew, that Rourke and I were the only ones on this submarine. I must have stood there too long, because the man frowned. "What? Never seen a mechanic before?" "Mechanic." The word rattled through me like a loose bolt in the hull. I opened my mouth, closed it again. My throat was dry. Finally, I whispered, "You weren't here yesterday." He laughed. A deep, guttural sound that scraped my nerves raw. "Been here since launch, friend." "Maybe you're the one losing track of time." My head spun. Maybe I was. Maybe exhaustion had twisted my memory so badly I'd forgotten him. But then, how could I forget an entire crew member? Rourke found me minutes later, still rooted in the mess like a statue. "What's wrong with you?" He barked. "There's someone here," I whispered. "In the mess. The mechanic." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "What mechanic?" I turned back to the table. Empty. The can was gone. "No trace of anyone. Right there," I shouted, desperate now. He was right there. Rourke grabbed my arm, his grip like iron. "There is no mechanic." There never was, but his face, oh, his face said otherwise. I saw something flicker there, something he couldn't hide fast enough. That night, the whispers returned. Not soft this time. Louder, clearer. "We're still here, below decks. Don't let him lie to you." I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The voices seeped through my skull, echoing down the corridors, bouncing against the steel. And then I heard something else, a scream. It came from the aft section, cut short too quickly, swallowed by silence. I bolted upright, heart hammering. Rourke didn't move. He sat at the console, staring at nothing, jaw clenched. "You heard that?" I said. "No." "Yes, you did." There was nothing. His voice was flat, final. The conversation ended before it began, but I couldn't let it go. The next day, I found another one. She was small, with cropped hair and steady eyes, dressed in a medic's uniform. She was standing in the narrow passage between compartments, clutching a clipboard. When she looked at me, her eyes were filled with pity. "You don't look well," she said softly. "You need rest." I couldn't breathe. "You weren't here before." She tilted her head, puzzled. "I've been here all along. You just don't remember." That phrase, it carved something deep into me. You just don't remember. Because what if that was true? What if memory had been slipping from me, piece by piece, without me even noticing? Rourke cornered me later. His voice was low, venomous. "You will stop this." What am I stopping? "They're here, Rourke!" The mechanic, the medic. He slammed me against the bulkhead, his breath hot in my face. "There is no mechanic. There is no medic. You are the only one making this real. Do you understand me?" But I didn't. I couldn't. Because I could still hear the medic's voice echoing in my skull, soft and kind. "You just don't remember." That night, I dreamed. Or maybe I didn't. I walked through the submarine. Every hatch open, every corridor lit with a sickly green glow. And everywhere I turned, they were there. The mechanic with his grease-stained grin. The medic with her pitying eyes, others too. Faces I couldn't place, uniforms I couldn't recall. They filled the sub, crowded the halls, breathing in rhythm with the groaning hull. When I tried to speak, they whispered in unison. "He's lying to you. He wants you alone. We were here before him." I woke drenched in sweat, but their whispers clung to me like seawater in my lungs. The fractures deepened. One morning, I passed the engine room and saw the mechanic again, crouched over a console, hands buried in wires. Sparks flew as he worked. "Careful," he muttered. "Hull integrity's dropping. If we don't fix it, we'll implode before dawn." Implode. The word rang like a bell.